Hello, English learners, and welcome. I'm your host, Paul. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Excited to chat about English learning today. You know how it is, you're learning English, you're feeling pretty good about your progress, and then bam, you hit a wall, you're in a conversation, and suddenly you're stuck. You know what you want to say, but the words just won't come out.
Yeah, that's super common, and it can be incredibly frustrating. And that's exactly what we're tackling in this. We've got a ton of great material from you, our listeners, about speaking fluently and without those confidence-killing pauses.
And we'll also be exploring how to speak without pausing, which delves into the reasons behind hesitation and, most importantly, practical solutions to help you overcome it.
And because we know you want to learn quickly and effectively, we're going to present all of this in a clear, structured way, focusing on the techniques that really make a difference and those aha moments that help the knowledge stick.
Exactly. So if you've ever found yourself frozen mid-sentence, struggling to find the right words, or wishing you could respond more spontaneously in English, this is for you. We're going to break down how to bridge that gap between knowing English and speaking it fluently and with confidence.
And to do that, we'll be addressing some key questions. Why is thinking fast in English so crucial for fluent conversation? What are the common reasons for those pauses and hesitations? And what are some practical techniques you can use to train your brain to think faster in English?
We'll also be looking at how you can speak more smoothly and reduce those awkward pauses, identifying some common mistakes that can slow down your speech, and exploring some fun, interactive ways to practice speaking at a faster pace. And finally, we'll touch on how shifting your mindset can really boost your speaking confidence.
Sounds good. Let's jump right in. So first things first, why is fast thinking so important for fluent English speaking?
Well, one of the things that really jumped out at me from the material you guys send in is that many English learners, and this is totally understandable, tend to translate from their native language before speaking.
Yeah, that's natural. But the problem is that mental back and forth creates a delay, making the speech sound less natural. It's like having an interpreter in your head for every single thought.
Right, it slows you down. And in real-life conversations, people expect a certain pace. When there are frequent long pauses, it can make things feel a little awkward. And it's not just about sounding awkward either.
Yeah, it can even give the impression that you're not as fluent as you actually are, even if you have a pretty good grasp of grammar and vocabulary.
That's so true. So really, it seems like being able to think quickly and directly in English is key to sounding both natural and confident.
Absolutely. The quicker you can access and use your English knowledge in a real-time conversation, the smoother and more fluent you'll sound.
Okay, so we get why it's important. But now, let's look at why those pauses happen in the first place. Why do English learners tend to pause so much?
Well, one major factor is the lack of confidence and that fear of making mistakes.
Yeah.
That anxiety can really make you overthink and hesitate before you even start speaking. It's like having an inner critic constantly saying, "Is that right? Are you sure?"
Right. Like, don't mess up.
Exactly. And then there's the obvious one, not having the right word at hand. Those vocabulary gaps can leave you searching for the right term, which of course causes a pause.
Absolutely. And another thing, which both sets of materials talked about, is the tendency to overthink grammar and try to translate entire sentences in your head. And because English has a different sentence structure than many other languages, this can really bog down your speech.
Yeah. I mean, some people get so caught up in trying to construct the perfect sentence that they completely lose their train of thought.
Right. And another thing that can really throw you off, especially when talking to native English speakers, is plain old nervousness and pressure. It can make you freeze up and forget words you actually know.
Totally. It's like your brain just goes blank. So we've identified the problems. But the real question is, what can we do about them? How can we actually train our brains to think faster in English?
Well, one of the most important things, and the sources really emphasize this, is to stop translating in your head. It sounds simple, but it takes practice. One way to do this is to start describing your day-to-day activities in English, even if you're just talking to yourself.
Like narrating your life in English. So you might say, "I'm walking to work," or "I'm making dinner," or "The weather's really nice today." It's about building that habit of thinking in English, even for simple things.
I love that. It's like creating your own little English world in your mind.
Exactly. And another technique, this one's kind of a challenge, is the 5-second rule. Basically, when someone asks you a question in English, try to respond within 5 seconds, even if your answer isn't perfect.
5 seconds? Wow, that's fast.
Yeah, it is. But the point is to prioritize speed over perfection. Just get something out there, keep the conversation flowing.
It's about breaking that habit of overthinking and just going for it. I like it.
And here's another fun one, word association. When you hear an English word, try to quickly say the first few related words that come to mind. For example, if you hear the word book, you might say read, library, author, page.
It's like a mental warm-up for your
Yeah,
vocabulary.
exactly. And then, of course, there's shadowing. This involves listening to short segments of native English speech and then repeating what you hear, trying to match their pronunciation, intonation, and speed.
So you're basically mimicking native speakers.
Right. And you can use anything for this, movies, podcasts, YouTube videos. It's a great way to improve both your processing speed and your pronunciation.
Okay, so we're starting to think faster, but how do we actually speak more fluently and smoothly?
Well, one key tip is to speak in full sentences whenever possible. Instead of just giving short yes or no answers, try to elaborate a little. For instance, if someone asks if you like pizza, instead of just saying yes, you could say, yes, I love pizza, especially with pepperoni.
It keeps the conversation going and gives you more practice speaking.
Another helpful technique is to focus on using simple, common English phrases. Don't get too caught up in trying to construct complex sentences. Mastering everyday phrases like, that's interesting, I see what you mean, or tell me more, can really help you communicate effectively and respond more quickly.
It's like having a set of ready-made responses for common situations.
Exactly. And here's a fun exercise. Describe objects or situations around you out loud in English without preparing beforehand. This helps you think on your feet and use your vocabulary spontaneously.
I like that. It's like a real-time vocabulary test.
And remember that tip about mimicking native speakers? Well, that applies to speaking too. Pay attention to how they speak, their tone of voice, their speed, even their body language, and try to incorporate those elements into your own speech.
It's about absorbing those natural rhythms and patterns of English.
Right. And another really helpful practice is to record yourself speaking English and then listen back to it. It can feel a little awkward at first, but it's a great way to identify areas where you can improve. You can listen for things like pronunciation errors, filler words, and the overall flow of your speech.
And of course, the most important thing is to practice speaking English as much as you can. Find opportunities to talk to people, whether it's with friends, in a language exchange group, or even just talking to yourself. The more you use the language, the more natural it will become. So we've got the techniques down, but what about those pesky mistakes? What are some common things that can actually slow you down?
Well, the biggest one, and we've mentioned it before, is thinking in your native language first. It just adds an extra step to the process.
It's like putting your brain through a translation marathon. Not very efficient.
Exactly. And another mistake is trying to be perfect. That fear of making mistakes can really hold you back. Remember, native speakers make mistakes too. Fluency is about communication, not perfection.
I think a lot of learners also overuse filler words like and it's natural to use them occasionally, but too many can make you sound hesitant.
One way to reduce filler words is to try replacing them with short, silent pauses. It can actually make you sound more thoughtful.
And this might sound counterintuitive, but one of the sources mentioned that not listening enough to native English speakers can also hinder your fluency.
It makes sense when you think about it. By actively listening to native speakers, you're constantly exposing yourself to correct grammar, natural pronunciation, and the speed of real English conversation. It helps your brain internalize those patterns.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, but what about some fun, interactive ways to practice speaking faster?
One of the sources suggested some speed challenges, like quick question answer. Have someone ask you simple questions and try to respond immediately without pausing to think too much.
That's a great way to train your brain for quick thinking.
Another challenge is the short story with a word. Choose a random word and give yourself 30 seconds to create a brief story using that word.
Oh, I like that one. It forces you to be creative and quick on your feet.
And then there's sentence completion. Have someone start a sentence and you have to finish it immediately with whatever comes to mind.
These are great ways to practice speaking more spontaneously, even if you're just by yourself. Okay, so we've talked about techniques and exercises, but what about our mindset? How can we approach language learning in a way that boosts our confidence and helps us speak more fluently?
Well, the most important thing is to embrace a positive and growth-oriented mindset. One key shift is to accept that mistakes are part of the process, not failures.
It's so easy to get discouraged when you make a mistake, but it's important to remember that everyone makes them. They're actually opportunities to learn.
Another important mindset shift is to focus on communication, not perfection. The goal is to be understood, not to sound like a textbook.
I think a lot of learners put too much pressure on themselves to be perfect.
And lastly, even if you don't feel completely confident, try to speak with energy and a positive tone. It can make a huge difference in how your message is received.
It's like projecting confidence can actually help you feel more confident. So we've covered a lot today. Just to recap, we started by looking at why it's so important to develop those fast-thinking skills in English.
We explored why pauses happen and what we can do to overcome them, including those 4 techniques: stop translating, the 5-second rule, word association, and shadowing.
We also looked at practical strategies for speaking more smoothly and naturally, like speaking in full sentences, using common phrases, and imitating native speakers.
And we identified some common mistakes to avoid, like thinking in your native language, aiming for perfection, and overusing filler words.
And we explored some fun, interactive speed challenges you can use to practice thinking and speaking faster. Finally, we talked about the importance of a positive and growth-oriented mindset for language learning.
So now it's your turn. Choose 1 or 2 techniques or exercises that resonated with you and make a commitment to practice them regularly this week. Even a little bit of practice each day can go a long way.
You could try narrating your daily activities in English or challenging yourself with the 5-second rule in a few conversations.
Now, here's a final thought for you to ponder. Imagine the boost in confidence you'll feel when you're able to think faster and speak more fluently in English. What new doors might open up for you?
How might this newfound fluency impact your personal relationships, your professional life, or your ability to connect with people from different cultures?
The journey to fluency is ongoing, but by actively incorporating these strategies into your routine, you can absolutely make significant progress and achieve your goals.
That's it for this deep dive. Until next time, keep practicing, keep learning, and keep pushing yourself to become a more confident and fluent English speaker.
See you next time.
Bye for now.